Sabrina 90s comic issue 29. We started with Harvey showing Sabrina the sunset near a lighthouse, and Sabrina appreciates it, but pointlessly complains that the lighthouse is run down. Is it? Harvey says that that's why his after-school club volunteered to spend the weekend cleaning it up, and it's being considered as a potential national landmark even though it's just a lighthouse. How many of those are there? How is it impressive? Sabrina asks if they're going to start working tonight and is predictably told no. Harvey says they're going on a moonlight fishing cruise tonight on Johnny's boat, and they'll go to the lighthouse tomorrow. Sabrina thinks that she saw something. Harvey says that the lighthouse has no electricity and some say it's haunted, and we see someone in its window. Sabrina thinks she should scan for spirits, and then there's a text box saying soon as Sabrina is with his club at night as they plan on going fishing. I thought Harvey was going to have that fishing trip alone with her. I was wondering how he thought that would be romantic. Sabrina's smart enough to decide to stay here and research the lighthouse instead of going with them. Apparently she already detected the spirit in the lighthouse earlier. She uses magic to light up the place and immediately feels cold, and then a pirate ghost threatens her, with this ridiculous dialogue trying to offset how menacing he is. He makes her shriek as I wonder why he was allowed to stay on Earth, especially if that's what he was going to do there. He wants her to run away, but she satisfyingly says that it's very rude to sneak up on someone, and then scares him by assuming a ghostly form and admitting that she's a witch. She scares him up the spiral staircase and teleports to take the shortcut. He asks her if she's a poltergeist parole officer. Are those a thing? And he sobs and tells her to go ahead and sentence him to another 100 years. He's been sentenced? If ghosts can be sentenced, that makes it even more confusing that they're able to haunt places on Earth if there's apparently rules restricting them. The witches won't allow them anywhere near the mortal realm if they could help it. Sabrina compassionately tells him to calm down, and says that she just wants to know why he's haunting this lighthouse. He says he'll be glad to tell her his story. I guess out of loneliness. He says that 100 years ago, he was a lighthouse keeper here. One night the lantern failed, and when he was repairing it, the lighthouse was struck by lightning. He was knocked out and never got the light on. Many ships were lost in the storm, and he was fired and disgraced, and years later died poor, and then Enchantress sentenced him to haunt the lighthouse. Why? How did it jump to that point? What does she care about mortals? I guess she does. But shouldn't she know that it wasn't his fault lightning hit? Why wouldn't he have been sentenced to hell or a horrible next life if they were being that unfair? That doesn't make any sense. How is that backstory worth it if he didn't explain it properly? Why would he be sentenced to haunt any place? Sabrina even lampshades that it wasn't his fault, and that's what he'd been trying to tell Enchantress for a century. The writer knew this was a problem with the story, and yet wrote Enchantress to do that anyways. Sabrina realizes that her friends are out there fishing right as it's storming out, and the ghost says that if they don't come ashore, they'll sink. Why is he talking like a pirate the whole time if apparently he was just a lighthouse maintainer? Sabrina asks what she's supposed to do. Teleport your friends back and then erase their memory. Instead, she's told that in the old days, the beacon would guide ships home. And Sabrina says that none of this antique equipment works anymore. Shouldn't it be immediately obvious that she could just fix the lanterns as a witch? Instead, he gets an idea, and after her time is wasted by fake tension with Harvey, the lighthouse turns on because of Sabrina generating a ball of light around her, which looks pretty impressive. I'm glad one of the mortals said that's impossible, actually questioning why the lighthouse was working. Sabrina thanks the ghost for his help. She calls him a friend, and says that she's going to simulate a lightning strike so the experts can argue over how this happened. Then she asks the ghost not to leave, and he says this is out of his hand. He's finally being accepted into the other realm because he's atoned for his previous mistake. Why is he saying mistake when the lighthouse problem wasn't his fault and Enchantress should have known that? And apparently the other realm is not only a place for witches to live, but also the afterlife for mortals. So a spy witch has to have seen this. I guess the reason no spy witch saw a so-called mistake earlier was that no witch was in there to be supervised. And Enchantress knew about the lighthouse incident because she was told mortals were talking about it. Harvey's saved thanks to Sabrina. Their time is wasted as we see a news report about the lighthouse leading Harvey and his friends to safety. Sabrina says that with all the attention on the lighthouse, this might help get it on the historic register, as if I'm supposed to care. It was just introduced in this issue. In the comedy page, Betty says that a beautiful looking dress is cheap, and Veronica immediately turns on it. Veronica the idiot. In the next story, Sabrina tells Salem to get on the job because there's a bunch of stray cats knocking down garbage cans all over the neighborhood. And I guess she's using them instead of dealing with them herself because she thinks anything she would do would be too mean, being a witch and all. Salem says that he's king of the suburban jungle and that cats are history. Well, he does apparently have powers. He plans on using the garbage can lid to scare off the ones beyond the fence. I'm guessing things will go wrong for him, since we're seeing him come up with its plan instead of him just doing it. Well, he does scare most of them away, but one of them slips on the trash, and he's immediately infatuated with a talking so-called gypsy cat. And she says that gypsy cats are used to being unwelcomed. This story seems familiar to me. I actually have the story. Salem thinks she's beautiful because she's been in the body of a cat too long. She says she'll head for the city dump and complains about her ankle, and he offers to walk her home and become friends. She doubts that because they're from two very different worlds. He brings her home, and she doubts that the king of the gypsy cats will let Salem visit her again. I wish it was explained right away why these magical talking cats were on Earth, and not the other realm. Instead, it makes the story look stupid. The story looks even more tedious because the king is a jerk. He thinks Carmilla brought the lid banger here so he can thump him, and she tells him to stop because Salem helped her, and he just pushes her down. He insults Salem for standing up to him, and then Salem uses the magic he inexplicably has to command the banana peel to slip him. One of the cats says that the king has to either avenge his honor or forfeit the throne. Why would the royalty keep that rule going? They wouldn't. That's so easy. Salem says that he just walks the lady home as he's threatening some more, and he makes himself intangible, causing the king to smack into the wall, and Salem gets hailed as a king and says that he could get used to this. That's a Salem I know. But I still can't take this story seriously. What's the point of these talking cats being allowed to stay in the mortal realm? Isn't it just gonna be a pain for the spy witches because they'll keep having to erase memories and videos of the cats talking? Not to mention, why does Salem have magical powers still? Then Sabrina immediately greets him in astral projection form, saying that she was getting worried about him because he was gone so long, and asks what this is all about. Immediately after Salem just proved himself by humiliating their king, the cats all turn on him because he was talking to Sabrina, and the white cat says she only pretended to like him and she knew he consorted with spirits. This is stupid. He said astral projection right in front of them. They know Sabrina wasn't a ghost. The story sucks. They're magical beings already. Why would they care? They wouldn't even blink at this. They're talking cats. They're intelligent enough to have a king system and put on a crown. Why doesn't the king have magical powers? If they were mere mortals, it would make sense that they would hate ghosts as much. But they don't. They also say demon and sacrilege. It makes me wonder if the story only had the cats be cats and not humans, because the writer thought he wouldn't be called racist against gypsies if he made the gypsies cats. After the garbage lid part, they're written like humans anyways, complete with saying words like blasphemy for a ghost being talked to. The story ends with Salem saying he goes for a sophisticated type of cat, like the one limousine, and he tells Sabrina to not wait up as she happily teased him. It makes Salem stop looking special to have him interact with a bunch of other talking cats with no explanation. In the next story, which should hopefully be better than that, Esmeralda says that shell collecting is boring, and Sabrina tells her that she said no magic on the beach. Esmeralda points out that they're on a deserted stretch, and Sabrina tells her to put that shell back in the ocean because there's still something alive in it. Esmeralda happily runs into the ocean as Sabrina keeps telling her to be careful because there's no lifeguards around. She's a witch! She can obviously just teleport her back right away. Why is she so worried? Esmeralda dives and puts back the conch, thinking that she's sorry. Really? That's nice of her. She also thinks that it's beautiful down here. It's good that we get to see a soft side of Sabrina's bratty cousin. She had no reason to join the school of fish. She'd be bored with them in a second. But it's at least subverting my expectation that she'd be trapped underwater with seaweed around her. She somehow thinks the school of fish are having fun. She turns herself into a mermaid to join them. And at least her text bubble is wavy looking and her mouth is still drawn closed. So she's not literally talking underwater like it's nothing. Sabrina says that Esmeralda's been underwater too long, and stupidly dives instead of just teleporting her back to her in a second to resolve the plot. And Sabrina's text bubble underwater looks weird too, and she tells her she's in deep trouble. I guess the text bubble is representing that they're speaking with telepathy. She turns herself into a mermaid, thinking somehow that there's only one way to catch that kid. This is Shadow all over again, where the whole plot happens because the character forgets they have teleportation. It would have made sense if Esmeralda was shown to have enchanted herself so that she could be teleported back to Sabrina, but even then, that'd be a stupid thing to do when she was at a beach near the ocean. Why would you ever take that risk? I like that Sabrina thinks swimming through the ocean is glorious, and has to remind herself to focus on the job. It reminds us that she's not just a serious authority figure just because she's babysitting. Esmeralda wants to catch a ride in the draft of a whale, and Sabrina somehow thinks it's dangerous because the wake is erratic. How is she thinking there's any danger when they're both witches? This is why Sabrina isn't an action series. All the tension would be even more fake and artificial than usual. The comic works surprisingly well most of the time. Out of nowhere, Esmeralda gurgles and thinks she's getting dizzy and chokes, and needs Sabrina to swim by and save her. They were breathing just fine before. She tells Esmeralda to snap out of it because they're somehow in it way over their heads. Esmeralda apologizes to her, saying that she got rapture of the deep. Huh? How'd she know that sentence? Sabrina says it happens easily, but there's lots of danger out here, like barracudas, stinging jellyfish, electric eels, and sharks. I love that we saw a hammerhead shark instead of a stereotypical shark. As weird looking as it is, at least it's unique. Fortunately, Sabrina gets brave and finally thinks to use her magic in a tense situation, summoning a hammer to hit the hammerhead. That was a visual pun, but needlessly cruel when she could have easily just teleported her and Esmeralda back to the beach without attacking an animal that only wanted some food. But it was nice of Esmeralda to say, "You go, girlfriend," instead of always hating Sabrina for being an authority figure over her. She's way nicer than Amanda. Sabrina leaves the ocean with her and actually admits that was fun, and says that with proper presentation, they could do it again. She says that she worked up a big appetite with all that swimming, and Esmeralda says that after being seafood, she doesn't feel like eating it. This issue is by Mike Gallagher. The first story is about Sabrina talking to a ghost of a guy who was knocked out by lightning hitting an old lighthouse a while ago, which caused many ships to sink, and somehow Chandra punished him for something that clearly wasn't his fault, by forcing him to haunt the lighthouse instead of simply putting him in a miserable new life or hell, since apparently it's her job to punish mortals after they die. I thought she was busy enough. And it's ridiculously dark that she's apparently in the habit of punishing mortals this way for things that aren't even their fault. It was interesting that the ghost actually told Sabrina's backstory and warmed up to her after being afraid of her and wanting her to leave. And predictably, Harvey gets threatened by a storm in his fishing trip, and Sabrina has to use her magic to save him. But she doesn't simply teleport him and his friends back and then erase their memories of ever setting out on the fishing trip, and make them think they just passed out drunk or something. Instead, she lights up a broken lighthouse, and it's reported about on the news, so that wasn't inconspicuous. The second story was about Salem being told to shoo away some stray cats knocking over the garbage cans in the neighborhood, just for him to fall in love with one of them and follow her back to the dump, where he meets a bunch of inexplicably talking cats. Why isn't this explained? They're on Earth. Why would they be allowed to live on Earth where they could be discovered by mortals? Why don't they have proper houses and jobs like witches? And it immediately makes Salem feel less special that he's talking to a bunch of other talking cats with no explanation. What really made the story tedious was that all of the cats were unlikable, and they're the ones who have most of the story's focus. The king wanted to beat him up and push the girl down, ignoring her. And then right after Salem's made the king for magically beating him in a fight with powers he shouldn't still have, his loyal subjects turn on him for talking to Sabrina in a ghost form. You'd think they'd be impressed that he's not scared of her. Their reaction to this would only make sense for mortals, not people who are already supernatural beings. They could have been drawn to look like humans the whole story and there'd be no difference, and the unfortunate implications would be more obvious. And I wouldn't be saying unfortunate implications if they weren't called gypsy cats for no reason. Was there supposed to be a legitimate parallel to real-life gypsies here? I don't see one. There weren't any fortune tellers like in Twilight Princess or Skyward Sword. They could have removed the word gypsy from the story and it'd only make it better. The title of the story was Gypsy Woman, not Cat. So that's disappointing. This was probably my least favorite of the Salem stories. If you're gonna have a story focusing on characters other than the main characters we all like, you're better off making sure that most of the characters in that story don't suck. Salem was the only likable one, and that's a problem. And the third story was about Esmeralda diving into the ocean and somehow thinking the school of fish were having so much fun that she had to turn into a mermaid to swim after them. And rather than Sabrina instantly teleporting her back to her, she turns into a mermaid herself to swim after her. I guess strange minds think alike. This is forced because she was worried and scared the whole time, so it's not like she really wanted to enjoy swimming through the ocean as a mermaid and appreciate it all. She was in a hurry to save her the whole time, so she wanted to waste it any time. Somehow Esmeralda needs saving, as a witch, and Sabrina hits a shark on the head instead of just warping back to the beach. How could they stand having their eyes open underwater? It's not explained that witches have some sort of thin film thing over their eyes that makes them able to see much better in the water, like a certain real-life group of people evolved to have after generations of diving in the ocean. I guess witches are fine with this. It's not like we were shown anything super interesting underwater that we'd never see in any other work of fiction. This might be the weakest issue in the comic, but it's still worth reading, and way better than plenty of stories I've experienced.